If you don't want to be in the video, that's cool. So we can share it with everybody afterwards. The idea of today's session is a really quick, punchy 15 minutes. So I'll intensively go through sales management for new salespeople for about 15 minutes, giving a bit of framework and some ideas, some structure that sits around that. And then we'll just do Q&A after that for 15 minutes after. Yeah. Hey, Steve, how are you? You're muted. So always very relaxed. I find it's easier just to do that 10, 15 minutes really quickly. And then that gives everybody a chance to ask questions at the end and give ideas and so on and so forth. So without further ado, let me just jump here. If I can get this, I need to move this up. There we go. So sales management for new managers. It's like a hot topic. I mean, the world's growing, the world's booming. We're all very, very aware that we need salespeople, we need effective salespeople to grow our businesses. And that dark topic of sales management, yeah, right, is something that everybody sort of steered away from over the years. The last sort of 5-10 years, I see more focus on developing salespeople than sales management. But now, with COVID, with the changes, I've seen a huge pickup on the conversation that rotates around the quality of sales management, how to adapt to this new world and how to engage more effectively. So the idea of today's session is not focusing on experienced sales managers, but more focusing on that world of junior managers and so on and so forth. And the team, some of the team are here today. We've got people all over the world, but from a training perspective and inviting guests today, you've got Simon's here, Ray's here, Charlotte is the coordinator, Graham is our course director, and obviously myself. And just sort of a brief overview myself, I've been in sales for about, I don't know, over 30 years. And I built models for hundreds of businesses, ranging from PwC, Chubb the insurance company, right through to SME startups and so on and so forth. And our objective is to help clients build, solid, well put together sales models, optimizing the sales process and getting that right ethical sort of structure in place. So sales management, we're going to cover personal sales versus managing. So, obviously, usually most salespeople come out of most sales managers come out of being a salesperson, and we're going to talk about managing versus coaching, sales process, metrics. So just take a very quick snapshot for 15 minutes on the structure of, what should a new sales manager be thinking about and how complex is it? And ultimately, I really want to address this point of why is it so difficult for sales managers to succeed. So let's start with this personal sales versus sales manager. Can a good salesperson make a good sales manager? And what does everyone think? All quiet. It's the only question I'm going to ask you, yeah? Is it yes? Is it no? What do you reckon? Yeah?
Not guaranteed.
Yeah. It's not guaranteed, but it's the elephant in the room, right? So it's a huge problem, right? It really is a massive problem for businesses, because if the salesperson doesn't make a good sales manager, as a cost for the business, it's not acceptable. Doesn't make sense, does it? Why would you pay someone to be a manager as well as sell you, right? That's not effective. And from a sales manager's perspective, to not be effective and carry on being a salesperson is a problem. Yeah. So the traditional journey of a sales manager, and this is not all sales managers, but if you took a statistical look over the last 20 years, you're probably going to find that a large percentages of these junior sales managers, as they come through, go like this. They start off with a sales career, right? They step into sales, they like it, they perform well, and they want promotion. So that natural thing is the company says, well, you're really good, right? We'll make you a sales manager because you're going to bring everybody else up to your level. So they become a manager, but they carry on doing their old job, because that's a lovely way to do it, isn't it? Let's get the salesperson to carry on selling, but also to become a manager. Yeah, so I get the best of both worlds. I get the revenue from the person, but I also get the sales management. But actually what happens is, as with all people, we get drawn to doing the thing that we're competent at, which is, in this case, is selling rather than management. And this is what the problem is for me. with businesses is we're not sitting down and saying, well, what does a sales manager do? How do you become good at this, right? And what is that balance as you progress from being a sales consultant to a sales manager to a sales director as such, looking at that. So what makes a good sales manager? In our opinion, you need professional skills. That means you need to know what is involved in a sales model. You need management skills, and you need coaching skills. So the three things sit there. They're all separate. They don't really, but they cross over, right, in the delivery, but technically they're all separate skills. And I'm going to break them down for you a little bit, right, as we move through this. So coaching versus managing, it's a really critical question, right? What is the difference between a coach and a manager? And what's the balance? How should we be doing that as salespeople? Yeah, I mean, ultimately, that managing refers to driving the team towards company goals. Yeah, that's what management is. Management is about representing the company, assigning tasks, delegations, monitoring, evaluating, and it's a critical part. That's why it's called a sales manager, not a sales coach. Yeah, but a manager should coach. Right, a good sales manager should also be a good coach. Right, should be able to develop the team. And so they're wearing two hats because coaches help other people achieve their goals. It's not the company goals, it's the individual goals. So it's building confidence, motivation, feedback, active listening, critical thinking, accountability. So there's two things going on there. The majority of management is in that junior level, I find that's not happening. They're not educated in these pieces. So therefore, how can they be a good sales manager? Okay. So there's a challenge there from a coaching and a management and a skill set that sits around that. The second piece for me is even more damaging, is that if someone's naturally a good salesperson, they often have got there because of talent rather than a structural process that's got them there. Now, I'm not saying that there are not people that have got there because they understand the structure, but the majority, I find, again, don't have a process and don't understand its complexity. They go, look, selling's easy. You just come out and do this, follow me, and I'll show you what I do, which of course we all know doesn't work because you can't duplicate what someone else does. The worst thing you can do in teaching another salesperson how to sell is take them with you, because they cannot understand the subtlety of what you're doing. You have to give them process and structure. So let's look at what sort of knowledge should a sales manager have a very clear view on, right, from a sales process point of view. So if you look at the sales process and at a basic level, you've got lead gen, lead nurturing, appointment booking, introductory meetings, discovery, collaborations, demos, workshops, proposal meetings, and finally, you end up with a client. So there's a complex set of things. And breaking this down even more, you look at how complex lead gen is, inbound marketing, outbound and targeted marketing, existing clients. As a manager, if you don't understand how these work and how they integrate, how can you manage your team? It's not possible. So understanding these parts and the technical side of it is critical. Then we look at outbound, which is what your salespeople should be doing. And nowadays, inbound marketing is not working as well in some businesses as it should. So they need to have solid outbound lead generation methodologies. So they need to be looking at partners and managing those partners effectively, looking at LinkedIn, using LinkedIn, looking at networking, if that's available to the business. And then finally, referrals are a critical piece of growing your business. So we know that you should be generating 40 to 50% of your revenue from referrals if you're doing your job properly with your existing clients and nurturing the right contacts. So again, how do you get your team to think about lead gen? How do you, as a manager, your job is to get your team doing lead generation the right way, yeah, right? And so my point all the way through this comes back to what skills does a manager need to be able to skill their sales teams up to be able to do these things effectively. So how do you find leads? Where are they? What's the source? How do you activate them? How do you engage with them consistently and effectively? How do you categorize what systems, what tools, what platforms are using? How do you nurture? And how do you make sure your reps are managing and nurturing their contacts on an ongoing basis? And finally, most importantly, how do you make sure that the reps that you're managing are booking meetings and booking the right volumes of meetings with the right people? So again, as a manager and as a sales director, bringing junior managers in, your junior managers have to understand how they're doing this and how they're going to inspire that existing team. I think one of the challenges salespeople coming into management face is this concept that we get drawn to do what we're good at. So if I'm naturally good at referrals, why would I use LinkedIn? I don't need to, yeah, right? Because referrals are the answer and referrals work perfectly. But as a manager, we've got to be all around. We've got to be able to do all areas because someone else might not be good at referrals, but LinkedIn and networking might be the lead gen model that we should be following. And I always start with lead generation as a manager. I see this as one of the biggest weaknesses in the majority of businesses. The management isn't able to teach, educate, coach, and manage effectively, right, their lead generation model. And so either they have a very successful inbound model. The majority of businesses we find have a very, very poor outbound model running on a consistent basis. So let's step into the sales cycle, right? So you're sat in your pipeline, you're looking at your pipeline, and you're looking at this structure again from a meetings point of view: introductory meetings, discovery, collaboration, proposals. How many meetings happen in a sales cycle? How long is the sales cycle? What goes into the sales cycle? What goes into an introductory meeting? What goes into a discovery? As a manager, coaching and managing a salesperson, you have to be able to teach this. I mean, that's the bottom line, right? We cannot say to people, you're a salesperson, you can just go and do this, because people are not trained properly anymore, right? That we're not in the world of in the 70s and 80s when I grew up, where you had Xerox and you had, and David, I remember that time, weren't you? But where there was heaps of training going on, everybody was trained, everybody's structured. I'm not saying it's the right structure. What they did then wouldn't work now, but everybody was trained and had a core understanding of what sales looked like. That doesn't exist. So the assumption that a junior sales manager is bringing a salesperson in with skills is incorrect. That will not be correct. And invariably, they don't have lead gen skills. They don't know how to do the meetings. So we look at an introductory meeting. This is an example of a process: research, rapport, asking questions, presenting at the right time, summarizing at the end of the meeting. I'll come back to research. The majority of meetings that I've seen salespeople do, they haven't done the research before they step into meetings. So it's a really simple piece, yet has a profoundly important effect in the whole meeting. If you've done your research, you understand the company, the industry, the person. When you step into that initial relationship, you understand the person at a completely different level. Yet most salespeople don't do research. They definitely don't document it in CRM. Yet that's the manager's responsibility to make sure all of this happens and coach the salespeople around the development of these skills. You can take us and we can train a salesperson, but if the manager doesn't coach through this model, actually the training we do is relatively ineffective. So, and the same goes for discovery. Again, having a structure around a model, for example, securing an NDA. I wouldn't do discovery without asking the client to do an NDA. How do you get the NDA to happen? What's the process? What is the company process? How does the manager manage the sales team to make sure they get an NDA? Because if you're on an NDA with a client, they're going to give you more information. And then you step into research, prepping your questions, and then you've got the actual structure of a sales meeting, pulling proper discovery out of the clients and engaging with them effectively. And there are two examples of the complexity of a meeting. You then step into proposal, collaboration, demo, and so on and so forth. So let's step into goal planning. Let's step into metrics and numbers and quantitative data, which again, I must have asked 100 sales managers, how many first meetings have your reps done in the last 4 weeks? And pretty much not one of them knows exactly how many they've done. Definitely none of them knew how many were done and what type of lead they were done with, and how many were going to next meetings. And this data, right, that we should be collecting is really, really critical. So from a sales manager's perspective, and a new sales manager, again, they need to know their sales ratios. They need to understand, how many introductory meetings does it take to get a discovery? Because at the end of the day, the number of new meetings that you're doing on a weekly basis dictate the volume of sales at the end of your pipeline. Right? If your typical sales cycle is 3 months or a year, we know that if you do no meetings this week, in 3 months' time, you're not going to have any sales. So what are the ratios? What is the timeline of the sales cycle? How effective is that sales rep, and how is the manager managing the skill sets needed to do the meetings or the lead gen or the proposals or whatever they're doing the right way. In this scenario here, you can see that to hit a target of 200,000 gross revenue a month, the sales rep needs to do 34 introductory meetings a month. So we know, right, what the number is the number, right? You know, if that number is accurate and it's based on quantitative data, then we know that's the number. We know we either they have to work really hard, do 8 first meetings a week, or we have to up the size of the sale, or we have to change the targets. But at least we know where we're at, and we're managing the sales rep through this cycle. And again, your manager, your manager coming in has to know how to do this and has to be skilled up on doing this to be able to allow them to manage their sales rep effectively and efficiently. Yeah? So conclusions. I think you've got to be really clear on the role. You're right. You know, as a new manager coming in, am I there to sell? Am I there to manage? Is it 50-50? Is it 70-30? Is it 30-70? But that role needs to be really clearly defined by the sales director, and the salesperson needs to be managed through that for one really critical reason, and I'll come to that. They need to be a good manager with coaching skills. So a manager needs to be able to coach, but they also need to be able to manage. There's 2 hats that we're wearing there. Your vulnerability as a sales manager is your strength. The thing you're best at is the thing that will actually stop you being a good manager, because you'll always get drawn to that as your topic of conversation, when ultimately you have to be balanced. You're right. You cannot go to your strength. You have to go to the broad model that your business should be following. So if your lead gen model rotates around partners, it rotates around LinkedIn, it rotates around webinars, you're right, then, you know, if you're weak on LinkedIn, then you need to be strong, yeah, right? You know, we cannot lead people if we don't have strengths in all of the areas and have that balance. You need to understand the process for the business, for the sales process, and finally, metrics. Without quantitative data, you cannot be a manager. It's not possible, right? You have to be able to look at the numbers and assess the numbers, and to be able to review and manage through the numbers. And salespeople like numbers if you manage them properly through the numbers, because nobody wants to fail. Nobody wants to be unsuccessful. The sales reps do actually want to do well. When they don't like the numbers is when you're bullied, or when they're highlighting a weakness and they're on that path to failure already. Yeah? That's the time that a sales rep doesn't like it. And I'd say one more thing from a process point of view. If a sales rep says to you, don't worry, in 2 years, the revenue will be here, that's a problem, yeah? I'm interested in what is the salesperson doing this week? How are they doing it? Because that will impact what happens at the end of the sales cycle, yeah? So it's a week by week basis that we manage our teams, not a month by month, not a quarter by quarter, it's a week by week. What do we do this week? What does a good week look like? What does a healthy week look like? So, told you 15 minutes, I must be pretty much on target there, yeah? Any questions? Is that helpful?
Yeah, brilliant.